Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. Have a special edition today with the hosts of the Muppetiers podcasts. So I have Riddy
Hello.
and Mike here today.
Hello.
Yep. So we're gonna get into discussing all of the latest on United transfers, up to date news, discuss the signings that have been signing that has been made and one that should be made very shortly, as well as the ones to come, the drama with Cristiano Ronaldo, and pretty much everything else about this very strange summer. So let's just get into it and start with our first signing of the summer, which is Tyrell Malacia from Feyenoord, who is a left back. And how do we feel about this one? This was an interesting kind of somewhat out the blue signing if you haven't been paying too much attention that he was near a deal with another club and United came in at the 11th hour and stole a deal and already have announced him as of what was it, Tuesday this week or Wednesday this week. So what do you think about this one, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's one of those intelligent signings that a lot of our fans have been asking for the past few years when we've been going after these Galactico signings, people like to call them, where we spent stupid amounts of money on all the players we've bought. But what Tyrell Malacia was 17 million euros at max, with that's including the add-on. So you're talking 14 million pounds. Absolutely nothing for a player who had great stats in the Eredivisie. No, it's not the biggest league, but he's only 22. And he'll be a great rotation player for the next couple of years, and then hopefully even be pushing Luke Shaw for the starting left back job, because he does show that potential that he could be a great left back going forward. And it's something we've lacked where we've had genuine competition. Obviously, the Alex Telles experiment has obviously failed, but I think it's a great piece of business for 14 million pounds when if he was playing at like a Spanish or an Italian club, you're probably talking quadruple that amount. So I'm really on board with it. I think it's a really good signing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all suffered watching Alex Telles the last year and the year before. He certainly has not brought much to the table. I'm still a big fan of Luke Shaw, but he also quite obviously needs some actual competent rotation behind him. His fitness is, I mean, it's an issue mostly because of his leg thing. I mean, what he had to have the screws taken out of his legs just this year again from his major injury. And so hopefully he'll be a bit more fit to come, but at the same time, not having to play 50, 60 games is a good thing. Riddy, what do you think about signing another backup left back? How do you feel about Tellez, Shaw, and what this means for them?
Well, I'm kind of more interested in the details of the deal. Well, obviously, I will just say that Tellez was atrocious last year. And I think it's very obvious that unless we give Brandon Williams a shot, which it doesn't look like we are apt to do, that it was very obvious that one of our most glaring positions that we needed backup in was left back, and to get a player that I have heard, haven't watched him, I will just say that right now. Uh, a player that I have heard has a lot of potential and talent as a left back competition to Luke Shaw, who, by the way, I don't think is going to end up being a left back competition per se, as you can see from last season. Luke Shaw is incredibly injury prone, and whoever is Luke Shaw's backup ends up getting a whole lot of game time, just like Brandon Williams did the season before we loaned him out, just like Tellez did last year when Luke Shaw was injured. So I do think that Malacia will probably end up having that spot, mainly just because Luke Shaw will be injured. So regardless of whether or not he earns it, he'll just have it. But from a deal perspective, I think what we did with Malacia and what we're looking to do with Martinez, I think is very intelligent from a United perspective. Basically, we wait until another club agrees a reasonable fee, and then we come in and we give a slightly higher bid for a player that we understand would have more of an interest of coming to United. It really helps with them not trying to basically jack up the fee because it's United versus another team. So yeah, I think from a deal perspective, it's a very good deal. So yeah, good on United and good for Murtaugh actually doing something different than what Woodward was doing.
Yeah, I agree, and it's smart getting some young players like this. And one thing to be clear is that United absolutely will and are planning to let Brandon Williams go permanently. They've been willing to sell him for a couple of years now. It's not expected that he would have any real sort of future at the club. So, there's not going to be too much of an overload, certainly at that position, and it's fine. I mean, Brandon Williams had a decent loan at Norwich, but it wasn't something that you would say was like, oh yeah, he's United level now and he can come back and play here. It's not what we need. Whereas Malacia has a huge amount of potential. Ten Hag wanted him at Ajax prior last summer, tried to sign him, and so it's a good player to help fit in some more of his style without being in the vein of older. Um, older signings just for the sake of it, which was part of the mistake I think under Van Gaal was signing when we were signing like players he was familiar with and players he knew. They were all old, and that was really the main reason why it didn't work out. Instead of as so many young potential players, which seems to be more of the theme now, which makes a difference, I believe. That being said, there is one somewhat older player that United are also on the verge of signing. They have agreed a deal with Christian Eriksen. He's chosen United. They presented the best package to him. I believe it's really near what they paid Cavani, which was about 10 million a year, with a big sign-on bonus. So it's not free, but it's a 2+1 type of deal. And Christian Eriksen had a great season last year at Brentford after coming back from his horrible kind of heart issue that happened with the national team. All of us, I think, have at least watched Christian Eriksen a lot in the Premier League for Tottenham, and he's an awesome player. He should be having his medical in the next few days. I don't know why it's not today, why it was delayed a little bit. It's one of those frustrating things with United that things just don't seem to happen ever on the terms and at the speed in which you would like them to. But it will happen in the next few days. And as Simon Stone said today, he'd be expected to join up at least in time for the 15th game. So maybe not flying out on Friday, but maybe joining up on the 10th or 11th over flying out east. So that is a really awesome one. I mean, free Christian Eriksen, one of my favorite players of all time. He trained with Ten Hag after his heart issue happened. He's familiar. He fits anything that we'd want to do. I mean, there's probably not a system alive that you couldn't fit Christian Eriksen into due to just the qualities he brings, his work rate, and all of that. Mike, I know you're also a very big fan of Christian Eriksen. What do you think he's going to bring to United, and what do you think his role will be at United?
Yeah, I think his role's quite a tricky one, really, because at Brentford and a bit at Inter Milan, he did show that he could play a bit deeper. Because obviously at Tottenham and even back years ago at Ajax, he did play more of a 10, if not a bit of a wide playmaker. Like he technically played right winger, but he would obviously drift inside quite a lot, like how we've seen Juan Mata over the years at United. Uh, I think he'll play all over midfield. He's obviously not going to play as like a defensive midfielder, but he'll play everywhere else. And I think that's going to be a good thing going forward with Frenkie de Jong, hopefully, and then obviously Bruno Fernandes and whatnot, because he's also a great creator, as we said. I think last season when he joined, he had the third most amount of chances created, only behind Martin Odegaard and Kevin De Bruyne. And then he's exactly that, a great worker, as James has already said. And I think he's going to be a great addition, obviously being a free transfer. I know we were linked for him years ago. I think it was 2019 when we got really close to getting him, uh, just before we got like Bruno Fernandes and when we were linked with Dybala. But I'm excited to have him. Ten Hag obviously rates him ridiculously highly when we've seen the reports saying him and Frenkie are the two he's desperately wanted. And it'll be great to have him. I think if he plays in like a deeper position, more like an 8, where he might play with Frenkie even in like technically a double pivot, but it won't be really. I think it could work, and we're going to have some amazing chance creation and just creativity, because when you have Bruno and Eriksen together, it's going to be havoc for the opposition defense. So I'm very excited for it, not going to lie.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love Christian Eriksen, and he does bring some things, like you said, that we don't have. He should be the set piece taker for any set piece anywhere on the pitch moving forward because he's levels above. He's probably as good as we've had, Juan Mata was a great set piece taker for us, but obviously was a bit too old to be on the pitch taking them. But he's as good, and that is a compliment, as Juan Mata is also one of the best set piece takers in the league. And that's a big difference for us, a team that has struggled so much with set pieces and scoring on set pieces over the last few years. And just real excited to see it. I'm sure that Ten Hag has a good plan for him to fit him in to everything that he wants to do moving forward, and just provide more options. Obviously, I'm gonna talk about the striker thing later and what this all means, because you're looking at a situation where we've got Bruno Fernandes, Christian Eriksen, Donny Van de Beek returning, and wondering how is everybody going to fit into the team. And I think we're all wondering that. But when we talk about strikers, maybe we'll explore that a little bit more. But before we do that, I want to move on to the next most likely signing and the most imminent signing after Christian Eriksen, and maybe even before Christian Eriksen is officially announced, which is the Argentinian defender at Ajax, Lisandro Martinez. And he's someone that Ten Hag really likes. That again, Arsenal were looking at moving forward towards, and then United kind of jumped back in after Jurrien Timber decided to stay at Ajax. He's played mostly center back. He's a left-footed center back. He's excellent on ball in passing and progressions. He's played a little bit in the midfield. Maybe not would be used there, but that's probably not what he's being signed for at all. We have a lot of midfielders. He's a bit undersized. He's a bit undersized for everything, but I guess we'll see. Ten Hag really wants him. He would obviously prefer to move to United to join up with Ten Hag over Arsenal, which has given United the advantage. So he's obviously on the verge of a move, as been discussed. The last report from Mike Verwijge was that they were around 5 million euros apart. This morning, what I was told on this from a good source is that they are on the verge of agreeing a 50 million euros deal total. I don't know the breakdown, upfront, add-ons, and said source is working on getting something, but does expect that this will probably break out in the next little bit. United wanted to get him in immediately and get him on the plane with the team, so they have a couple players familiar with Ten Hag and his system to start training, to start on the tour, and all of that. So I do expect this could move very fast. It's close. They're obviously pushing for it. An interesting one. It's a little bit expensive, but at the same time, it's another good young player that does fit the system, what we're trying to do, and probably provides quite a bit of flexibility. Um, Mike, what do you think? Have you watched much of him, and how do you think Ten Hag plans to use him in alignment with all the other players we have?
Yeah, I've watched him bits over the years because he's been at Ajax now for I think 3 years, if not even four now. Uh, Obviously, as you said, he has played in other positions before. He started off as a defensive midfielder at Ajax, but then he did drop into the centre back role. There was talk that Ten Hag wanted to play him as a left back when there was talk of Nicolas Tagliafico leaving, but that never came to fruition. But yeah, he's done his best, obviously, as a centre back, and that is where he'll play predominantly. I think it could be a situation like how Manchester City have used Nathan Ake, where he's occasionally played left back. I think he's played like 1 or 2 games in midfield, like when they really, really need it. And I think that'd be the same with Martinez, where if there is an absolute injury crisis, like how we had at the end of last season, where we had a Pogba Lingard double pivot, I think that's one where Martinez could play in. But he's predominantly going to play centre back, and yeah, he has incredible stats. I think everyone has seen them on Twitter and all the other reports of just how great he is with the ball. Even his defensive stats are quite high. Obviously, the underlying the elephant in the room is obviously his height, where he's 5'9", 5'10", which isn't the best, but it doesn't really matter if you have all the ball, really. So I'm decent with the deal. I would have preferred if we did it next summer, for example, where we had shored up more and we brought him in more as a big time rotation player. But I don't think we'd have that opportunity with Arsenal sniffing around him, and we could do much worse because, as we've seen, he's great. He's been great under Ten Hag, and I do think he'll do well at United when he hopefully joins.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also spells, of course, the end for, you know, Bailly and Jones and Twanzebe and these other center backs because, like you said, we could have looked at it next year because we've got so many already, and you know, with Lindelof, with Varane, with Maguire, Martinez will get minutes. The other thing I think it certainly indicates is that they want to rotate a little bit more than we have the last few years because that's been a serious problem. Varane can't stay healthy either. I mean, he missed half the games last year, so you really do need four center backs, and you don't want Maguire to have to play 60 games either, as that definitely caused some issues with him. And then the other thing is potentially the change in system. In terms of how Ten Hag plays and in the different styles that he plays, where you could almost play him as a left back, but not really a left back, where he's as a center back, and there's a lot of big differences in how United might play when it comes to signing more options like this. But it certainly all speaks of a transition towards a very ball dominant possession based system that Ten Hag would like to play. What do you think, Riddy, of making another center back signing, and what does it mean for the guys we got? Do you think it could be as well a potential future replacement for someone like Varane, who's in case he just can't stay healthy over the next few years?
Yeah, well, that seems to be the biggest problem, doesn't it? Is kind of we have so many center back options, and obviously this has been discussed at length. But like Maguire had a pretty bad year last year. Varane couldn't stay healthy. Bailly is just Bailly. I don't even. Jones is Jones. At one point, Jones was our best center back, which in one of I think he basically should have won man of the match. So we're buying a rotation center back player for 50 million, which I think is probably fine. The only question I have is what how much progress have we made on actually selling some of these players like Jones, Bailly. I know we're not going to sell Lindelof, so Jones, Bailly, Twanzebe, James. Which of these have we made any progress on any of these deals? And do you feel which of them is the most likely to be sold at this moment?
Probably Bailly. He still has some value. It's kind of a weird one because you see things saying that he wants to stick around and all of that, but let's be honest, he can't stay healthy. He's obviously not rated. We're buying. We bought a left back before selling Tellez, and I like the approach this year, not waiting to sell to buy because that ends up stagnating us because we tend to be so bad at sales. I mean, we've finally sold Andreas Pereira. Okay, just to be discussed. We finally have sold Andreas Pereira, who should not have been here for at least 5 years now, but he is gone. And United are struggle with sales. They really do. It takes a long time, so buying before you sell is fine if we need to. It's crazy that we gave Bailly a new contract to basically not play at all and now be sold. But when Martinez comes in, I believe they'll just let Bailly go. I'm sure he has offers from Italy. Twanzebe will get offers too. He's English. He's young. He'll get offers. Jones is a little more difficult still because of his salary. He's going to have to accept a move to somewhere like the Championship to get a move, I'm sure. But there has been some progress. There has been some discussions. So I think they will end up going after this, but they're all going to be evaluated in the end. But yeah, I would expect them to be somewhat ruthless on the clear outs, and I think once these major signings get in, they'll start moving forward with the sales and clearing things out. They're obviously doing things in a certain kind of sequence right now, and giving Ten Hag as many options as he can for preseason, at least to try things out and see how he wants to play and what he wants to do. So yeah, so again, Martinez, the information is that they're closing in on that 50 million euros total deal. It's not done yet, but it does look very close, given that as well, he has not joined their training today, and it's been publicly reported, has asked them to make a deal. So he's going to get a deal. Uh, it would be shocking, I suppose, if somehow Arsenal pulled it out and they were the ones agreeing a deal now. Just given the personal connection and all of that. But it seems like United have made it a priority the last few weeks, the last 2 weeks, real to be specific. They suddenly have kind of moved into action on all these players, Malacia, Eriksen, Martinez, and Wall trying to wrap things up with De Jong, who we will talk about next because this is the biggest transfer of the summer and also the most frustrating at the moment. It's obviously dragging like hell at the moment. The current situation is, and this again, it's been confirmed, which is kind of wild, but it's been confirmed by pretty much most of the tier ones in England, and it's unusual that you get these confirmations without the deal being imminent and without the deal happening quickly. But that the fees are agreed, but there are financial complications on the Barcelona side of things in terms of deferred wages and fees owed to the player and agent. To be clear, the last 2 years with Barcelona's financial difficulties, they agreed with most of their players to defer wages for years that are due this season. And it's something in the order of 16 million or 18 million euros that is owed. And it's due this year. And so this is a big part of Barcelona trying to force Frenkie de Jong to leave. They don't want to pay this money, they can't afford it. And his wages are also set to increase dramatically this season. He's going to end up on like 400,000 a week, and they just can't afford it no matter what happens with their levers and all of that. And that's been the driving force behind the entire deal. But at the same time, you have Laporta and the infinite wisdom of him, as well as all of the people over, at Barcelona, how they've been running things so competently for years. He's running his mouth publicly and saying he's not for sale and they don't want to sell him and they don't want to do this and that. But the narrative has basically now kind of been set that it's Frenkie de Jong's fault if he leaves because he wouldn't accept reduced wages and he wouldn't accept compromises, and that's sort of the Barcelona way, but it is incredibly messy and incredibly frustrating seeing this happen because usually when you agree a fee and United have agreed a significant deal that is worth 65 million euros plus add-ons, it kind of just moves and you get the player, but instead it's dragging out almost endlessly here to where now he's not going to they expected him last week, they expected him this week, and it's just not going to happen. He's not going to be here this week, he's not going to be on the plane. um, Obviously, he doesn't need as much preseason time as someone might, given how familiar he would be with Ten Hag and his system and all that. But it is kind of ridiculous how this is dragging out. And I think no matter how likely it feels and how confident the club are, and no matter how many times anyone, even including Simon Stone, says the fees agreed, I think we're all a bit nervous about it until he actually ends up arriving in Manchester, just due to how crazy things can be at Barcelona. So my question is, with how frustrating is it also worth it to do this when you compare how useful he'd be to the system as well as the lack of potential viable alternatives that would be as good as him? What do you think, Mike, in terms of that question? Is it worth all the frustration?
Yeah. To put it simply, yeah, I do. I think a lot of it now, because we keep seeing Laporta running his mouth, is they're just posturing so they can look good, and Laporta himself can look good for, obviously, in a few years' time when there's more of another election for the Barca presidency, you can say, well, I tried with De Jong, but he didn't want to take this pay cut, etc., etc., when they're obviously the ones to blame for giving them that stupid amount of money anyway. It's quite underhanded from Barcelona, but I think De Jong's definitely worth it. He's one of the best midfielders in the world, especially in Ten Hag's system, where I think in that 2018-19 season, I think the majority of us would say he was a top 3 midfielder in the world, and maybe at least top 5. I think he'll be a great fit. And I think if you asked any of us, 3 months ago, if we'd be having a chance at Frenkie de Jong, we'd all take it within a second and we'd all laugh if people thought it was actually a realistic chance. He's that good. And even myself was saying there's no way he'd go to PSG or Man City. And the fact is we're probably going to get him. It's insane. I think he's going to be a perfect player for us. He's going to be a deep lying playmaker that we haven't had since the days of old Carrick, if not Skulls, which is saying something of how long it's been. And it's going to be great having him next to whoever in that midfield, because I think he'd really turn us into a great team that can play the way Ten Hag wants to play. And even if Ten Hag doesn't last as long as we hope for. He's still a world class 24-year-old, I think, midfielder. I don't think you can really go wrong with him. So I know it's frustrating, but this is a Man United summer transfer, isn't it? We always have a stupid saga that goes on way too long. I expect it was Varane last year. It was unfortunately Sancho the year before that didn't happen, but it happens at United, and I think De Jong is definitely worth it. He's the right fit. He is a bit of a superstar, but we're not just doing it for his name alone. We just know he is the perfect player for Ten Hag. So I think it's worth giving an extra couple of weeks for Laporte to do whatever he wants to do, the stupid underhanded stuff he's doing at Barca, and then we can finally have our man.
Yeah, it's. By the way, it's not even that United have these deals every summer. It's also that we're dealing with a team like Barcelona who are, first of all, notoriously just a pain in the ass to deal with. Look at and Laporte, who is just like known for just total bullshitting. I mean, look at what happened. Look at all the times he's issued statements about the sale or purchase of a player that have just been blatantly false. And like James was saying, it's all about narrative. It's all about narrative, and everyone knows Barca's financial situation. It's been discussed at large by many people. I mean, there was basically a whole conference about them having financial levers, them having to give away rights to their image, to TV deals. They're really not in a good place. And then, like I said, I'm not going to go too far into it just because it's been discussed at large. Um, but basically, if they want to have any ambition this summer, they have to sell him. So any posturing, any bull from Laporte is basically, like James was saying, all just creating this narrative around, oh, it's Frankie's fault. And I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it while we have seen deals fall through. This one's different, mainly because with the Sancho situation, there really wasn't a lot of noise and there wasn't a lot of actual articles and actual news coming out saying that we were going to buy him. It was random sources here, random sources there. Tier ones have confirmed that we've agreed a base deal, and just from that perspective, that's huge. And by the way, I had said at one point when we were like right in the heart of June and nothing was going forward, nothing was progressing. Everyone was very like angry and confused, and I was getting a little depressed. Everyone was getting a little depressed because nothing was happening. I had said that our financial situation was dependent on understanding what we had to pay for Frankie this year. And Frankie was our number one priority. He was Ten Hag's number one priority. And while it may be annoying that whole um, our whole budget is dependent on Frankie, that was what the situation was. And once we confirmed what we had to pay for Frankie this year, which was, I think it was 65 base, and then we're working on the add-ons. Once that was 85 total, 65 base with the 20 million add-ons, which we're still working on, including, as James has said, the deferred wages. Once we had determined that we were going to pay 65 million pounds or euros to Barcelona this year, Malacia went through, Martinez started to get worked on. We were able to sign Eriksen, and possibly there's, the news just came out about Antony, how we wanted to pay them 60 and they want 80. But deals went forward once we figured out that we were going to pay that amount. And so from that perspective, I wouldn't really worry. Everyone feels confident. Everyone feels good about it. But yeah, from a financial situation, Barca just are screwed. They need to sell him. And if they're going to buy Lewandowski, news came out that Lewandowski or that Bayern want 100% of the value for Lewandowski up front because they don't think Barca is going to be a club. They're going to need to sell Frankie. So yeah, I feel pretty good about this deal. It's a little bit frustrating, but it's good to see other deals moving forward. And it's also, you can feel confident knowing that deals are moving forward because we know we have to pay for Frankie this year.
Yep, that makes sense, and I think that is exactly what's going on with the whole situation. Barcelona have been driving the deal from the beginning. they're the ones that have been pushing the sale, so it makes really no sense for Laporte to say he's not for sale. It's been on them. The first thing that came out from it was Romero, who's basically his mouthpiece, saying that the deal was 95% done at the time, or 95% likely, or whatever, which wasn't necessarily true back then, but they've been driving it and trying to pick up buyers and get things moving along, and that's really been the major force behind it. So it's worth it, and I agree with Mike as well. As I've looked at it, there really isn't a better alternative. We've talked a lot about a player like Declan Rice as a great potential midfielder for United, but even at 70-80 million euros, it's a significantly better price for probably a better player. It's worth it, and someone who knows and fits Ten Hag's system exactly. But speaking of Ten Hag's system and how we're going to play, this leads us to kind of the final point of this video and a major potential issue, which is, so Ronaldo wants to leave United, which means with everything that United do not have a striker at all. At the moment, there's Cavani is gone. Obviously, number 11 is not going to be back anytime soon, or probably ever. And so United do not have any sort of number 9 of any kind. They were pursuing a deal for Darwin Nunez earlier. They did not complete. He signed for Liverpool. They have not had any backups really ready. So I guess the question is, how do we feel about that? Is it okay if Ronaldo leaves? Is it okay if we play a totally different system? And would we survive, or should United desperately be looking for some sort of striker solution? What do you think, Mike, about all of this?
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, I think Ronaldo should go, surely because of the age-old no man is bigger than the club, and the way he's treating United right now is pretty disgusting. I think missing training and all that kind of stuff, and not to mention all the stuff about in the past. But I think we'd be fine without him. I know we did miss out on Nunez, and there's been talk of Anthony, and there's been quite a few other strikers on the market like Victor Osimhen and Gianluca Scamacca and all those strikers. Uh, but I think we'd be fine, surely because, as we've seen with Liverpool and City over the past couple of years, you desperately don't need a out-and-out number 9 to do well. We're obviously not going to be contending for the title next year. We want to try and solidify top 4. Well, I assume that's what most people will be happy with. And with our sheer amount of chance creation we should be having next season with the likes of De Jong, Eriksen, Bruno, Sancho, all these great creators, it should not be too hard for the likes of Marcus Rashford to get back to the way we remember him, where he was scoring 20 plus in all competitions. Obviously, I know, James, you made a big point about this throughout the year, was Bruno's contributions with Ronaldo. Like, that dropped quite significantly, and that could really increase again. And even the hilariously ironic one, there's still Anthony Martial, who does great when there isn't another striker. So who knows? He might be able to bag maybe 10. But I definitely think we have the options. And I don't think there's any need to desperately pursue a forward for stupid money if we could just wait the year, see if we can get everything else set up like Liverpool and City have, and then add this 9 like Liverpool have with Nunez, City have with Haaland. I think maybe a short-term option would be great right now. I know Carl Anker of The Athletic even said someone like Jamie Vardy or someone like that along those lines would be a decent signing for dirt cheap for a couple of years. But I think I'd be fine with it if Ronaldo goes and we don't bring in a 60 million replacement or something, because we need to get everything else sorted before we add that cherry on top, so to speak. So I think I'd be fine with it, but maybe next year we could definitely get it sorted out.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation because, as James has been so sad about, when we lost out on Darwin Nunez, we kind of lost any semblance of a real striker. And then at that point, we were really reliant on Ronaldo. And now with him basically, I feel it feels a little like a betrayal. I'm going to be completely real with you here. Like he could have waited 100%, or he not could have waited. He could have done this the second he knew we weren't getting Champions League. This whole thing about it's Champions League is actually such bullshit. When we lost out on Darwin Nunez, it really just feels like he decided that we didn't have ambition, even though we're in the market for Frenkie. Where looks like we might sign Frenkie de Jong, and we signed Malacia, and we're going to sign Martinez, and we have an Eriksen, and we have all these players. Where very clearly we do have ambition in the transfer market. We missed out on one player. We didn't want to pay £100 million for a player who's had one good season in a mediocre league, which I know was Mike's whole commentary about Darwin Nunez in the first place, was he had one good season for a team that plays in a crap league. We don't want to pay $100 million for the guy, which, by the way, 100% reasonable. I know we haven't really spoken about this. I haven't spoken about this since we had the whole deal situation, but like that's completely reasonable to me. 100 million is basically a large portion of our budget. We probably wouldn't have been able to sign Frenkie de Jong. We'd have to have significant sales. It just didn't make any sense for us. And it's complete overpay, would posture us terribly in the market, position us terribly in the market, where teams are saying, oh, they're clearly willing to pay 100 million for Darwin Nunez. Like Barcelona would probably say, oh, you're paying 100 million for Darwin Nunez, but you won't give us 80 straight up for Frenkie de Jong. It made no sense. So that whole deal, by the way, like if that's the reason why Ronaldo thinks we don't have ambition in the transfer market, then he can piss off anyway. It's stupid and it doesn't make any sense. So with him leaving, like they were saying, our striker options are extremely limited. I have a little bit of hope that like maybe there's some random 18-year-old striker, 19-year-old that like we've been scouting in the Uruguayan league or in the, I don't know, Ecuadorian league that maybe we'll be able to pull in, but it's not looking promising. And I know some people aren't super high on Antony, mainly just because he's not an out and out striker. He's more of a right winger. He doesn't really solve the striking problem. And I do think that 80 million euros would be a significant transfer fee for somebody who may not be proven in a better league. But regardless, I don't know how it's just a tough one, mainly because Ronaldo's has put us in such a bad position, and he doesn't even seem to really care about where he goes either. Like Barcelona, Chelsea, I mean, just seems like he really has no loyalty at this point. So it's definitely really unfortunate. Um, Obviously, I wouldn't say no to Anthony, I don't think it's a super great deal. I don't know if it makes sense from us from a positional standpoint. But if Ten Hag feels like Anthony could play striker, or he thinks maybe one of our current striking options could fit that, who am I to argue with a man who's been watching training, leading training, and who's played and who's managed these players before? So definitely a tricky situation. And Ronaldo's definitely left a bad taste in my mouth with this whole situation, that it feels very selfish and very ill-timed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that pretty much kind of sums it up. So we'll have to see what United do here. Um, yeah, Anthony would be a lot. My concern with Anthony for 80 million is you end up 80 million for him, 80 for De Jong, 50 for Martinez, 15 for Malacia. You're spending 200 plus million euros, and you may end up with one starter out of that. That's a lot of money to be spent without necessarily upgrading the starting 11. It's a big risk. Personally, my opinion is if they've made, as it's reported, a 51 million bid for Anthony, going any higher than that would be crazy. Leave it at that. If you cannot get him, play with what we've got. We scored a lot of goals in 2021 without Ronaldo. We scored a lot of goals in 1920 without Ronaldo. You added Christian Eriksen. You have Donny van de Beek coming back, who could be used as a forward option. Let's see, what they can do with that, with those options, with Eriksen, with Bruno, with Donny, with Rashford, with Sancho. We didn't even have Sancho in those 2 seasons, with scoring all those goals. We didn't have Eriksen. Palestri's been doing really well for the Uruguayan national team. even though his loan was bad. We've got a lot of options, and I would say, to me, the best thing is take this team, see what it can do, maybe add a stopgap, or even look in January to adding someone if you need to. It's only a couple months. You have the World Cup that's going to interrupt things. Come back in January and see if we need a striker for a short term until next year.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. We really appreciate all of you, and it's really good to be back. Been a while. It's been it's been very tough to do these podcasts for me specifically because United has sucked all the joy of supporting the club out until recently. So it's been good. So glad to be back. Glad to be able to feel good about United for a while, and good to be back with Mike and James to record some more of these going forward. We'll have some more special guests, some interviews. Mike's gonna restart his interview series with some really awesome guests with some of his friends that he's made in the journalist industry. So that's really awesome. And yeah, looking forward to doing more of these. And we will see you guys next time. Cut.